Look, we have all been there, right? You're trapped in this weird office political game you definitely never signed up for, and you're just watching someone way less competent get the promotion simply because they knew how to work the room. Well, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the fascinating and honestly sometimes ruthless dynamics of power. We are taking a journey from the scheming of ancient royal courts all the way to modern-day self-mastery. We're pulling from a really rich blend of sources for this one, primarily diving into Robert Greene's infamous book, The 48 Laws of Power, and we're going to synthesize it with a pretty unexpected perspective, yogic philosophy from our sources at Shut Up and Yoga. We're going to figure out exactly how to navigate the very real hierarchies that dictate our lives, but we're going to do it not by being manipulative, but by being incredibly self-aware.
So let's just dive right in by asking a pretty provocative question. It's one we've all definitely pondered after a really long, frustrating day at the office. You know that exact feeling. You just want to put your head down, do the actual work you were hired to do, and completely ignore the office politics swirling around the water cooler. You're probably thinking, why do I even have to play this game? Why can't I just opt out entirely? Well, whether it's moving up the corporate ladder, negotiating a freelance gig, or honestly, even just trying to decide what movie to watch with your friends on a Saturday night, the game of power is always running in the background. We all want or need something, and those basic human drives naturally push us toward trying to gain influence over our environment.
And here's where it gets tricky. Our sources from Shut Up and Yoga remind us that trying to completely opt out of these social games by just telling the blunt, unvarnished truth usually fails miserably. Seriously, it leaves you incredibly vulnerable. Just imagine telling your boss, your best friend, or your partner exactly what you think, completely unfiltered 24/7. Actually, definitely don't do that. It is a total recipe for disaster. Our sources point out that if you drop the reins of the game and pride yourself on just being totally honest all the time, you are basically guaranteeing one of two things. You'll either make everyone angry, or you'll get easily manipulated by the people who are actively playing the game simply because you refuse to engage. You can't just refuse to play, you have to fundamentally understand the rules.
Okay, so the absolute most crucial point we have to understand here is Robert Greene's infamous first rule of survival. Law 1. Never outshine the master. Now, as our sources highlight, this really isn't about being evil or malicious. It's basically an observational science about managing the fragile egos above you. Think about it. Everyone has insecurities. It is just human nature. When you show off your talents to the world, you naturally stir up a bit of envy. But when it comes to the people who hold literal power over your future, like your boss, a gatekeeping teacher, or a massive client, outshining them is literally the most dangerous mistake you can make. Your goal here isn't to hide your talent forever, but to package it in a way that makes your superiors feel, well, comfortably superior.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core of human insecurity. Our Farnham Street source pulls this amazing insight from the 17th century philosopher Balthazar Gracian. People in high standing desperately want to feel like they deserve to be there, right? They want to feel superior in intelligence, wit, and charm. If you walk into a room and constantly remind them that they are fallible, or if your absolute brilliance makes them feel kind of dumb by comparison, you instantly become a threat. And they will not love you for your brilliance. Sure, they might fake some appreciation for a fleeting moment just to get a project done, but at the very first opportunity, they're going to replace you with someone far less threatening to their self-esteem.
History is absolutely littered with people who got this completely wrong. Take Nicolas Fouquet, for example. He was the finance minister for King Louis XIV. Fouquet was brilliant, insanely wealthy, and really wanted to solidify his standing with the king. So what does he do? He throws this lavish, outrageously expensive party at his magnificent new chateau to win the king over. Best chefs, massive fireworks, the whole shebang. But instead of impressing the king, he accidentally threatened the king's ego. The king felt completely upstaged by his own minister. Fouquet outshone the master, and it literally resulted in him being arrested and spending the rest of his life in solitary confinement. Talk about a backfire. But then, in stark contrast, look at Galileo. When Galileo made his paradigm-shifting celestial discoveries, like finding the moons of Jupiter, he didn't just go around boasting about his own astronomical genius. No, he strategically named the moons the Medicean stars. He linked his massive scientific breakthroughs entirely to the glory of the ruling Medici family, massively validating their ego. And the result? He gained their lifelong patronage, steady funding, and crucial political protection.
Now, I know what you're thinking. You don't have to throw a lavish 17th century party with fireworks to mess this up today. As the Urban Dictionary source points out, you can accidentally threaten a superior just by being your highly competent self. They call this the Jane phenomenon. Jane was totally blindsided when she got fired, especially because she was undeniably the most talented, hardworking person in her entire company. What she completely missed was that her natural charm, her quick problem-solving, and her obvious competence made her boss feel deeply insecure every single day. Our Life Math Money source calls this the classic crabs in a bucket mentality. If you have an insecure boss, literally just being yourself can be enough to draw unwanted ire. Sometimes you just have to actively mute the side of you that triggers their insecurity in order to survive the week.
To see how this plays out in the modern corporate world, we have to look at this incredibly blunt, high-stakes advice from billionaire Charlie Munger. Munger shared this story about a brilliant young lawyer who had just clerked at the Supreme Court. This kid walks into a new, high-powered firm and naturally wants to show everyone just how much he knows. A senior partner actually pulled him aside and gave him this unforgettable framework for survival. He basically said, make the client look like the absolute smartest person in the room. Then, use any leftover energy you might have to make your boss, the senior partner, look like the second smartest. Only after you have thoroughly satisfied those two massive obligations to their egos should you let your own light shine at all.
So if you're sitting there wondering how to actively survive this dynamic without completely losing your sanity, here's a highly practical playbook for managing up based on these laws. First off, never walk into a meeting and say, "My idea fixes the problem you couldn't solve." Instead, frame it collaboratively. Say something like, "Building on your recent direction, I've developed a potential solution." Second, act slightly naive about something that isn't too obvious and actively ask them for help. Psychologists call this triggering the helper's high. It makes them feel benevolent, wise, and, again, comfortably superior. Finally, ascribe your creativity to them. Make it seem like your brilliance is just a natural echo of their great leadership and past advice. However, there is a very distinct exception to this rule. It's called the reversal. This is where strategic patience really pays off, specifically when a leader's star is genuinely fading and a power shift is completely inevitable. If your superior is actively losing power, making really visible mistakes, or just becoming entirely obsolete in their thinking, the rules flip. This is the moment when you discreetly demonstrate your capabilities to the people above them. Now, you don't actively undermine them because that just makes you look untrustworthy, but you position yourself as the highly competent alternative. But listen, our sources warn us. Timing is literally everything here. If they still hold firm power, you have to remain patient. Overplaying this hand too early is absolutely fatal.
Now, to keep all these laws from feeling like cynical manipulation, because let's face it, it can sound pretty dark, let's pivot to our yoga and spiritual sources. They beautifully reframe how we interact with these exact same power structures. It is so easy to read the 48 laws of power and feel like it's just a sociopathic manual for the seat. But our Shut Up and Yoga source brings in a critical concept: mastering your emotions so they do not master you. Just like martial arts dojos tell you to leave your ego at the door, if you want to survive the modern workplace without becoming incredibly toxic yourself, you have to leave your emotions at the door. You have to learn to observe the situation with zero bias, almost like a detached participant.
Notice the really profound shift here. We are moving from viewing power as a malicious outward game to treating it as an internal practice of emotional regulation and supreme self-respect. The trap is treating this like an outward game of manipulation where you're playing the system just to control people. That is deeply exhausting and ultimately hollow. The yogic approach to power relies entirely on inward regulation. So, when your boss acts out of insecurity and takes credit for your work, you don't react emotionally. You don't spiral and think, "Oh, the universe hates me." You just observe the dynamic objectively. You recognize they are insecure, and you strategically adjust your behavior without absorbing their toxic energy.
True strategic influence actually requires achieving equanimity. That's where you observe these workplace power dynamics without letting them destroy your inner peace. Our sources note that yoga isn't just about stretching exercises to get your blood flowing, right? The entire focal point of the philosophy is this pursuit of equanimity. When you deeply understand the laws of power, you actually stop taking vicious office politics personally. You realize it's really just human nature. It's a room full of fragile egos and deep survival instincts. Equanimity allows you to apply Law 1, making your boss look good, not out of fear, and definitely not out of sycophancy, but out of a really calm, calculated understanding of the board you are playing on.
And this perfectly aligns with Greene's final principle, Law 48, which teaches us that surviving the game means dropping inflexible habits and flowing effortlessly like water. If you are rigid, you break. If you are stubborn and you need to be recognized, praised, and validated for every single thing you do, you will undoubtedly trigger the master's insecurity, and you'll get crushed. But if you assume formlessness, if you stay grounded deeply in your core values but remain completely fluid in your strategy, you can adapt to any boss, any hierarchy, and any office culture. You basically give them the exact shape they need to see, while you quietly and calmly maintain your own true power.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to consider about your own workplace survival, your adaptability, and your personal growth. Take a hard look at your own life right now and ask yourself, where is your absolute need to be right or your need to be recognized actually costing you your power? Are you accidentally outshining someone who holds the keys to your future just because you refuse to adapt? Remember, true power really isn't about being the loudest or the most impressive person in the room. It is about being the most aware. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.